بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسعدنا ان احنا نفتتح هذه الجلسه، واحب اشكر زمايلي على هذه الدعوه الكريمه، الاستاذ دكتور وائل بحبح، الاستاذ دكتور محمد زنون، والاستاذ دكتور علي الشافعي على دعوتي لحضور المؤتمر الرائع اللي دايما معودنا ان هو يبقى مؤتمر متميز. سعيده بوجودي مع الشير بيرسونز، ونحب نقدم الفيرست سبيكر دكتورة وفاء عايش من دبي هيلث اوثوريتي. هتكلمنا على الانترال نيوتريشن ان بيدياتريك بيشنتس.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مساء الخير. You're tired, right? جوعانين يمكن. I hope I'll be in a benefit. I'll be fast and precise because I can see the faces that you're tired. I'm going to talk about enteral nutrition, but before that, I'd like to thank Dr. Bahba and all the team for inviting me to be here. I'm honored to be in Egypt, and I'm honored to be in this excellent, informative conference. I'm going to talk about the enteral nutrition in critical care and clinically ill patients in pediatric. Why we care about giving them nutrition? They are critically care, very sick children, and we have to give them nutrition. Beside the pediatric, beside the pediatricians, beside the ICU patients who are very fragile and they really need an extra care, we as a clinical dietitians are there to give them that, to assure that they have the energy, the nutrients, all the support to have the optimal growth that they need, and to prevent any problems or contraindication that might happen further, and to promote normal, healthy eating and feeding for them. Now, this chart shows why this age group from 0 to 2 years are very crucial, because the brain, 60% of the brain food intake energy are used for the brain growth. 60% of what they are taking, what they are eating, is used for the brain growth. And the brain, from the newborn, brain weight is 333 grams. By 2 years, it triples. It becomes 999 grams. So it really needs to make sure that they have the proper nutrients to have the growth of the brain goes in a smooth way. Plus, when they are in the second, let's say from the 1 year to 2 years, we concentrate in certain nutrients that benefit the brain development, such as DHAs, such as omega-3, the fatty acids. Why is that? Because all the researchers have proven that they have an impact on the neuromotor growth. By 2 years, they are stabilized. The brain growth is good, sufficient. Then we care about other things such as vitamins. Of course, from the beginning, we are taking care of them, but we give them extra care. Now, nutrition, we put goals. Whenever we want to see a patient, we have to put a goal for them. And these overall goals prevent or treat any of the macro and micronutrients deficiencies if there's the dose of the nutrient component with the existing metabolism, what is the metabolism of this child, and how is the nutrients going well. Any complications can be forbidden by giving a proper nutrition, and of course, we have to improve the overall patient's outcomes. What else? We have to make sure as well, when we give them the proper nutrients, that what is the medical condition of this patient? What is he suffering from? So, when we give a nutrition regimen, it's tailored for each patient alone. We never give the same diet to all the patients. It has to be tailored, it has to be individualized upon the disease and upon the diagnosis, upon the nutrition status, and the available route for administration. What else? When we intervene as a clinical dietitians, we look into what? What is the age group? What is the clinical picture of this patient or infant? What is the possibility of having an oral intake? If his gut is working, then that means he might have a good oral intake or not. The absorption, does he, when he takes the nutrients, does it being absorbed in a proper way, digested in a proper way, and what is the dietary habit? And all over that, we have to consider the cost as well. When we go for nutrition, for pediatrics and adults, we have to have the same pyramid. We go for nutrition counseling up to oral nutrition. Then, if it is not working, we'll go for enteral nutrition. If it's not working, we go for parenteral nutrition. So it has to start by the nutrition counseling and going up. And when we do the strategy, there's a management strategy for the nutrition counseling. We start by sipping the patients, and if he doesn't have it in the simple, cheapest, safest nutrition way, and he can't take it, and it's not enough, then we have to go for giving them oral supplementation to assure that those patients having the enough nutrients that they need and their energy intake is given appropriate accordingly. And we have to make sure that it is enriched by 1.3 to 1.5 kilocalorie per milligram per day. If more energy required upon the, for example, burn cases or catabolic status, then we have to increase the calorie intake for those patients. Now, what is the enteral nutrition definition? It's any feeding directly into the stomach or duodenum over the tube or stomata, and oral provision or of dietary food for special medical purposes. Why nutrition is important? As I said, when we have clinical nutrition and critical illnesses and poor nutrition, the patient doesn't survive. But when we are giving them a proper nutrition, they will survive faster, the cost will be faster. But if we didn't have that, they will stay longer in the hospital, longer in the ICU, the cost on the government and on the patients will be high, and even the mortality rate will be increased. For a physiological stress response of catabolic phases, this is a very, let's say, straight impact on the critical illnesses, which increase the calorie intake and the needs, and the nitrogen, urinary nitrogen losses will increase. Inadequate intake, which leads to the wasting of the endogenous protein stores, which cause glycogenesis, and as well we have a mass reduction in the muscle protein breakdown. So we have to make sure that in the critical care we are giving a very, let's say, close look on those patients and observe them closely and make sure that they are having the energy needed upon their needs. Now, increased energy expenditure, it have an impact on pain, anxiety, if they have a fever, if they are shivering. All those affect the calorie intake for those patients, and we have to increase them. What is the rule of enteral nutrition versus parenteral nutrition? We have the rule of the thumb, where the enteral intake improves the gut's function and morphology, and limits the bacterial translocation, limits the sepsis, decreases the incidence of multi-organ failure, and it is 3 times less expensive. So therefore, when the gut is working, we go directly for enteral nutrition. And there's a lot of evidence where you can go by aspirin, by aspirin, that prove how to use them and when to use them. Now, when to use them? When the patient is not growing properly and we have a growth failure rates, we follow them if it is more than 1 month in the child and less than 2 years, if the growth failure for 3 months and in the child of more than 2 years, and we take the triceps, we take the measurements, and we assure that where's the percentile and where they are falling, those percentile, and if they didn't meet what we need, then we have to take care that those patients might go for malnutrition and we might lose them, so we take an extra care. Now, there's clinical indications for enteral nutrition. One of them, when they are not having enough food due to so many reasons. They are having inadequate, like trauma, or they are having coma, they are have anorexia, they are fatigued. so they don't have the exact amount of calories that they are supposed to take per day. So they are not meeting the requirements. They might have a muscle wasting, and they will start having malnutrition. Then, if they have maldigestions or malabsorption, which again increases the nutritional losses, like for example, short bowel syndrome and others. If there's an increase in the nutrition requirement for burn, up to 100% the increase of the calorie intake for those patients. Trauma, for example, if there is altered metabolism for inborn errors or others, then again we have to look for enteral nutrition for those patients. Of course, we give the enteral nutrition, but sometimes there's a contraindications. What are the contraindications? If there's an intestinal perforations, if there's an obstructions, any mechanical or illnesses, if there's a major intra-abdominal sepsis, or if they are suffering from anemia. When to initiate? We initiate in our hospitals within 24 hours, as soon as possible. If the gut is working, we go for as soon as possible to start, especially if they are in catabolic status or very critical care, like in burn units. The routes, we have different routes. I'm sure you know them, naso or transpolic or PIG. According to the case of the patients, with the pediatrician in the ICU, we go for the needed route for the feeding for the patients according to his case. And when we draw back of enteral nutrition, the first one, when we have any gastric emptying impaired, then we stop any aspiration, we hold it. If there's a diarrhea, we might, but not all the time, because immediately the pediatrician, as soon as the patient have diarrhea, they will stop the feeding. And it's not always the case that the enteral feeding causing, but we hold it for a while, check what other reasons that might cause, and then we introduce the enteral nutrition again. If there is any displacement of the feeding tubes, we withdraw the enteral feeding for a while, or we hold it. What are the nutrition requirements? In children, according to the BMR, or the basal metabolic rate, from 37 to 55 kilocalories per kilogram per day, which is the 50% of the energy expenditure activity, plus, of course, we consider the growth in that. We have a lot of factors that affect the energy expenditure, such as when I said we have burn. Burns, that means they are in catabolic status. We need to increase the energy up to 100%. Sepsis, 40 to 50. So according to their major surgeries, 20 to 30. So according to their status, we increase the energy expenditure. Now, there's a lot of schedules that can help the pediatricians, the clinical dietitians, that can know from them the resting energy expenditure, again, according to age group. And also, we add some factors that, as I said, if they have multiple traumas, they have burn units, they are sepsis, we add them to those requirements when we calculate the total calorie for those patients. Now, nutrition requirement, we start with initial protein intake from 1.2 to 1.5, and we might go up to 2 grams and even higher if there's a muscle wasting. Again, as I said, from the beginning, 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, each patient have his own regimen for the ICU, whether he's a pediatric or an adult. We tailor the diet for them according to their need. It's tailored individually, and we go for 24 to 30 calories per ounce formulas, and we usually would like to have, we'd love to give always the usual continuous feeding if it is, because they are mostly well tolerated than others. And we definitely, when we start calculating, we don't forget to do the catch growth energies for recovery and adequate calories, which leads to adequate growth. Now, we have practical approaches. Now, we have the patient. What we start with, we go for a nutrition assessment. a very detailed nutrition assessment. We take the full history. We take everything related to malnutrition. We underline the intake. We do the physical anthropometrics, the BMI, the waist circumference, everything for, the head circumference for the babies. We take the lab test, the albumin, the pre-albumin, the transferrin. We take everything in consideration when we want to put the patients on a diet. And we also assess the persistent illnesses, whether they have any further problems that can lead to more metabolic card facilities that needs more energy expenditure. Now, when we go for formulas, there's a lot of formulas. As I'm the director of nutrition in Dubai, we are in Dubai Health Authority. We have all the formulas according to the cases. Each case, diabetics or metabolic, or if they have any problems, we tailor it accordingly. And then we look into the carbs from 60 to 70% of non-protein calories. We go for the lipids, 30 to 40% of non-protein calories, and we make sure that it is the source of essential fatty acids, and MCTs are the direct portal of absorption, which is much better for the patients. We make sure when we select the formulas that it meets the requirement. We look into the proteins, and we look into the fibers, what kind of fibers are there for those patients, and which disease and which category can go with those fibers or without fibers. And when we select the formulas, we go according to the age-specific nutrition requirements. Infants, small children, 8 to 10, we have all these formulas up to the adult formula, and accordingly, whether they have liver diseases, they have diabetes, they have pancreatitis, they have allergy, they have any kind of problems, we look into the viscosity, we look into the osmolality, and definitely the cost plays a role in that. Sites, routes, and mode of delivery, all of that, we take care with by the way, it's a multidisciplinary team. It's not the dietitian alone. The dietitian with the nurse, with the clinical pharmacist, with the dietitian, all together put the plan for those patients, not a single one. And when we go, as I said, when we go for the selections, we have selections of enteral nutrition formulas in respect, for example, for the nutrition sources, or if it is for disease specific. If we are like MCT based for if it requires the absorption of portal blood, high energy intake formulas, which we have like 2 kilocal or 1.5 kilocalorie. We have high nitrogen, we have high lipids. According to the needs of the patients, we give the formula for those patients and other disease specific. Now, one thing about the formulas, the standard formulas can be very safely used for 90% of the patients. But if you can give a specific disease formulas, it will be, let's say, the absorption better and the intake better, and the results of the recovery is higher. So it depends on the country and what is their abilities. But 90% of them works with the standard polymeric formulas. Dangers of overfeeding. Now, if they didn't give the proper nutrition, and if they have an overfeeding, then they might have diarrhea, they might have hyperglycemia, their electrolytes, it will be imbalanced, like low potassium, low magnesium, there will be an overload of like CO2 production, and the O2 productive consumption, the oxygen consumption will be higher. So we have to be careful when we write and prescribe the diet for the patients, for the pediatric patients or adults, and to make sure that they are having exactly what they need according to their diseases. Now, we give the diet, we give the proper regimen, we follow them, we have to monitor, is my diet right? Is my patient following my diet in a proper way, the growth is correct? We have to monitor. we have signs for monitoring. For carbohydrates, let's say high indicators for carbohydrate excess, we reduce the substance. For protein, the nitrogen balance, for example. For the fats, the triglyceride. We look into the electrolytes, the vitamins levels. All of that, we have to make sure that we are giving the proper feeding accordingly, not overfeeding our patients, which might, instead of making the recovery faster, it will make it slower, and actually it will add a load on the recovery. For the enteral nutrition, as I said, we have different sets. In our department, in the DHA, Dubai Health Authority, we are using the closed system as it is safer for the nurses, because nurses are fully occupied. It's even for time for them. It's much better because you can just hang it from 24 to 48 hours. But if you don't have them, then you can go for the open set, which is cheaper, and it can go every 8 hours in the hospital, 12 hours at home. Now, what is the complications? We look into it and we prevent it. If there's any problem like gastrointestinal problem, or we have technical problem, metabolic, psychological, each problem we categorize it and we put solutions for each one of them. We put formula selections and delivery like the osmolarity, disease specific. We monitor the gastric residuals. We look into the tube and the stomata selections. We make sure that the quality is upon the protocols. We have key performance indicators that always we are looking into what our patients are having, and we are a team. Team approach always give you a success stories. Now, weaning from enteral nutrition, if we have now given them the proper nutrition and I see that my patient is recovering, then I start, and he have a stable condition, appropriate status, in nutrition status, all his lab results are good, his muscles is good, and the growth of this baby is doing well according to his percentile, then enteral nutrition to be stopped when the oral intake is sufficient and my growth of that child is appropriate. In my conclusion, we start as soon as possible the nutrition. The enteral nutrition route is preferred when available. We set goals for my patients accordingly. We give them appropriate monitoring, which is very essential, and definitely we have to avoid any overfeeding for my patients. And we use the gut whenever it's possible, as soon as possible, as much as possible. Standard palmeric formulas, as I said, are useful for 90% of the patients, and enteral nutrition, it is safe and effective method. So if closing monitoring and following protocols, I'm sure with a good team, good pediatricians, good dietitians, good nurses, and definitely a good feeding, you will have a healthy baby. And these are my references, and thank you. On time, yes, that's good.
Thank you much, Dr. Wafab, about this very essential item, especially in critical illness, because the critical illness itself is a catabolic state for the body. And when it is with the fasting or starvation, the outcome will be worsened. And so enteral nutrition is very important. And the abbreviation MBO, which is nothing but us, for the most of the critical cases, should be so limited,
yes,
as you say.
We don't have any more NPOs actually in our hospitals.
Yes,
it's not there. It's not there. It's not there.
Yeah. Any question about this, the nutrition في ICU في pediatric? Anyone? Okay, so.
Bismillah. Thank you, Dr. Wafa, for your excellent presentation. I have only one question related. What is the best approach to know exactly whether this formula will promote anabolism or not, away from the body weight and the anthropometric measurement?
What is it?
The best approach that we can do it during the calculation, that this formula can promote anabolism.
Anabolism?
Yeah.
Yeah. For those patients?
Yeah. Away from waiting for anthropometric measurement. When we are doing calculation, how much we need to give as carbs routine?
I just said it
Yeah.
actually, but you can read. We go up to 60 to 70% of the carbs for them, and we make sure that it meets the requirements for 37 to 55 calories per day, and then the proteins goes up to, again, according to the status of that patient to prevent any anabolism. If there is any like burn cases, we go up to 100%. Like if he needs 55, we can go up to 110. So according to each status, we calculate the needs for those patients. But out of it, let's say 60 to 70% carbs and 1.3 to 2 grams per kilogram per body weight is proteins.
Any question? Thanks much, Dr. Wafa, about
Thank
very
you.
nice
Thank you.
talk. Thanks much.